Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are commanded to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not. Today I want to talk about the ancestor who advocated for economic independence for Black Americans way back in the 19th century. And now here we are, 100 and something years later, just now realizing that we needed to be focused on economic independence all the time. Not voting, not integration, not interracial marriage, economic independence. That is what runs this country. So let's talk a little bit about Booker T. Booker Taliaferro Washington was born April 5th, 1856, and died November 14th, 1915. He was an educator, author, and orator. Between 1890 and 1915, he was the primary leader in the African American community, as well as the leader of the Black elite. He was born into slavery on April 5th, 1856, in Hales Ford, Virginia. He was freed after the Civil War. As a young man, he worked his way through Hampton Institute, which was Hampton Normal and Agricultural Institute during his time. In 1881, he was named as the first leader of the new Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, an institute for Black higher education. Booker T. Washington began at Tuskegee with two curriculums. He had the academic curriculum, where you could learn how to be a teacher, an accountant, a nurse, a professional skill, but he also had the vocational curriculum, where you could learn carpentry, plumbing, electrical wiring, masonry, and skills like that. So he realized that the new freedmen needed a means of making a living, as in learning skills to do the work that would bring in money. And he also recognized the need for educating the community. So you needed the teachers and the nurses and the doctors and so forth. And so he did both, which was really extraordinary for the times. Working with the money from wealthy businessmen from the North, Booker T. Washington built up an impressive infrastructure at Tuskegee. He also built schools throughout the southeastern region of the United States. Booker T. Washington was so good at raising money that a woman named Anna T. Jeanes wrote him a check for $1 million to be used to educate the children of the formerly enslaved people. Because remember, the boards of education in the South would not allocate any money to educate Black children. So Booker T. Washington, through his fundraising, was able to educate the Black children in the South. That dude knew how to raise some money, y'all. So Booker T. Washington was really about education and economic independence. And he preached that, and he worked. He put it into action. It wasn't just about words, but it was also about action. In 1900, Booker T. Washington founded the National Negro Business League. It was to promote the interests of African American businesses. The mission and main goal of the National Negro Business League was to promote the commercial and financial development of the Negro, as we were called in those days. It was composed of Negro men and women who had achieved success along business lines. It grew rapidly with 320 chapters in 1905 and more than 600 chapters in 34 states in 1915. So this was a serious organization of Black men and women who had established their own businesses and were successful. Booker T. Washington was serious about educating Black people, and Booker T. Washington was serious about Black people being serious about building their lives independent of their former slave masters. So he was all about building wealth and working together as a community to establish wholesome and prosperous communities. Now, in the days that Booker T. Washington lived, there were those who did not like him. The knock on Booker T. Washington was that he did not believe in integration. He did not advocate for black people integrating with white people. He advocated for black people establishing their own independence, their own economy, their own communities, and their own educational systems. Now we hear black people talking about that now. We need to separate. We need to separate. Well, he was trying to tell you that 100 and something years ago, but they didn't want to hear that because what did Cynthia G say? 16 years after, 16 years after they got out the plantation, they were at the Supreme Court trying to marry white women. That was, it was a fantasy, believing something that almost was impossible to happen, and that was to marry a white person was going to bring you equality and great happiness was just that. It was a fantasy. Now let me quickly add some balance to this. There were black men, and many of them who agreed with Booker T. Washington, and they were the ones that came out of the late 19th and early 20th century prosperous. They were the ones who owned land, who had businesses. In fact, Black Wall Street in Tulsa was built on the Booker T. Washington model, as well as other cities in the United States, building on economic wealth and turning your money over in your own neighborhood. So many people followed his model, and they were the ones who ended up being the most successful. Now we know what happened in Tulsa, and these massacres happened in other cities as well. It was because black people were closing the wealth gap between the white people. They had come out of slavery, hit the ground running, building communities, educating children, building their own economy. And what ended up happening, I can't keep count of the massacres because every time I think I've got a number locked down, another one pops up. So they keep reporting them. We still don't have the total number of massacres that happened to black people after slavery. Burning them down, shooting them up, and blowing them up, and getting you out of town. So that's what happened. But it was because they were following the Booker T. Washington model. Many of them were. And it was a successful model. So Booker T. Washington was not an integration man. He understood the situation that black people were in. And he understood that in order for you to be independent of your slave master, you're going to have to learn how to fend for yourself. Now, a lot of people didn't want to hear that, but that's what he had to say. So he really got in trouble with a segment of the black community in 1895 when he gave an address in Atlanta, and it really ticked black people off. I'm not going to go over the whole speech, but I'm going to give you the AI summary. Booker T. Washington's Atlanta Compromise speech is a significant moment in African American history. In this address, delivered at the Atlanta Exposition on September 18, 1895, Washington emphasized accommodation rather than resistance to the segregated system. He urged African Americans to focus on vocational education and improving job skills through manual labor rather than solely pursuing social advantages, higher education, or political office. His famous metaphor of casting down your buckets where you are encouraged building friendly relations with their southern white neighbors and seeking economic progress within their existing circumstances. It's a powerful reminder of the complexities faced by African Americans during that time. So that is absolutely true. He was telling black people, learn how to do a skill, get along with those white people. They will hire you to do the work that you know how to do, and that will help you build greater economic wealth. He was also saying, when he's talking about social relations, he's talking about interracial marriage. You don't need to be worried about interracial marriage. You don't need to be worried about running for political office. You need to build economic wealth. And black people went crazy. That's where the controversy came up between Booker T. Washington and Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, which I will not go into here. I have done videos on that. But anyway, Booker T. Washington did not bite his tongue when it came to telling black people, you need to get a job. And that's what we say today, get a job. So he was saying, you get a job that people want you to do, working with your hands. And that way you build the wealth, and then you can educate your children. They can get the political position. They can move into society. But you need to learn how to get some money in your pocket. That's what he was saying. And now we see it. But too many of our people couldn't see it then. But okay, y'all, let me know what you think about the video. Thank you for listening and have a good day.